You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, and welcome. As always, I am so grateful that you are here, and this week's episode is going to be super short because I am traveling for the very first time since 2019. And OMG, I don't even know what to do with myself. I am literally, by the time you are listening to this, I might be on an airplane going somewhere. It's domestic travel, so it's not, anything exotic. Trust me on that. But it is, it's going to be so interesting being in an airport for the first time since 2019. And we normally do this annually, like even a couple of times annually. It's so crazy. But I am going to a professional retreat for a couple of nights, and where I was going, the guys that I live with, we're going to talk more about them in just a moment, but they were just not interested, and they're like, okay, we're going to just rent a camper and go glamping for the weekend while you are gone. I'm like, oh, okay, y'all have fun with that. I'm looking at the weather forecast and it's gonna be hot AF. Anyway, all of this aside, the reason that I wanted to discuss shame this week is because it has cropped up in so many of my conversations. So I would love to take just a moment to remind you today of the difference between shame and guilt. Okay? Let's just talk about that. Guilt is when you have done something wrong. You've done something, quote unquote, wrong. Shame is when you are wrong. You are just wrong, however that may appear. And let's break this down because this is so super important. We assign shame. Guilt is like, when I think about that, I think about guilt as an emotion, right? Like it's a feeling that happens after we have done something, quote unquote, wrong. But shame, that's almost an identity. So that is why I want to break this down. I was thinking about this based on the various conversations that I have had throughout the week so far, is that I'm thinking of three different things in terms of, three different scenarios, if you will, about shame. One of those is my own, right? Like when you are born, you are just born shamed. You are born ashamed. I started this entire podcast talking about shame because I had already encountered, before I turned 18 years old, I had already encountered shame around the way that I came into this world. I'm going to just give you an abbreviated version of that first episode, only because, first of all, I was I was very raw at the time. I was very new. I was having a harder time finding my words. That said, I do believe that talking about the story of how I was born really is helpful and impactful. Maybe. Because just to give you an abbreviated version of that particular episode, I was not born in a hospital. I was born on a mountaintop, on a hilltop in eastern Kentucky. That's my hippie parents. I'm just going to skip straight to the point. My hippie parents at the time, that's what they were at the time. They may or may not still be hippie, but it was just a situation where years and years and years later, I had to keep dealing with it. And every time I did, I felt shame. I felt like if I wasn't born in a hospital, as quote unquote, I'm using air quotes now, as normal babies are born, which again, I will add, throughout the world, there are at any given time thousands of women giving birth outside of a hospital, and maybe just in nature. So I had to come to terms with that. I had to really understand and come to terms with that, because I never in my entire life, in my particular generation, I am Gen X, okay? So in my particular generation, I had never in my life encountered another home birth. It just was unheard of. It's like, you are, what? No. It's like almost when these kids, and these kids being like, it was my senior year, I think. Yeah, it was my senior year. Yeah, that was my whole story. That was my whole story in episode 1. It was not the best. It was not the best recording, I don't think, possibly. However, it is the truth. And the truth is that a couple of young, beautiful, wonderful people decided that they were going to have their baby in nature. They planned for that. So it was not my choice, of course. However, when I think about it, and I just step back and I think about how wonderful that whole scenario is, I'm like, oh, you all, have you ever been in a hospital? It's not a fun place to be. So if we can birth babies in the wild, and we can, then why should I feel ashamed of being that baby? One of those babies. Why should I? Right? So I had to come to terms with that. I had to think about that. I had to really, really process all of that. And today, as a result of that, as a result of me processing that, I am proud of it. I am no longer ashamed. I was bored of the dirt, and I'm happy about it. I think it is a beautiful thing. It's wonderful. So I include that as of course I'm saying I am a unicorn at the same time, but there are so many of us that feel that we are not good enough by our very existence. And of course I could not control where I was born, how I was born, the conditions under which I was born, whether or not I was born in a hospital, whether or not I got a birth certificate before I was 2. That's another total topic. We'll talk about that another time. But I just want you to consider, when I share this with you, that we do not get to decide necessarily in our human form where we are born and who we are born to. Now, in our spiritual form, and when I think about it now, and when I look back at it, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I chose this specifically because these people are going to give me a wild fucking ride. Imagine being able to choose. All right. So the first way, I'm telling you 3 ways that I think that shame appears in our lives, in our daily lives. First is how we are even in existence. That's it. Yep. So I share my birth story, and I say, I didn't choose to be born on a hilltop in eastern Kentucky and, in the sticks. And I didn't choose any of that. I didn't choose my parents. Yeah, we say that, but maybe we did. Maybe we did. So I just want you to think about that. I want you to sit with that for just a minute. Then I want you to think about the number 2 reason, and that is daily life. The number 2 reason that we experience shame is our daily life. Trying to think of an example of something that we are more likely to encounter some scenario. Let's say driving drunk. And this is a slippery ass slope because you can have a few drinks and drive yourself home depending on where you are. You can legally do that. It's like, whether or not you are drunk, quote unquote drunk, depends on what the breathalyzer says, right? Honestly, you don't set out to endanger others. You just had a couple of drinks at the open bar at the event you just attended. And you might have a mild buzz, but you elect to drive yourself home, and here we are. You are over the legal limit. The outcomes of getting pulled over, running a breathalyzer, maybe a field test, maybe you spend the night in the clink. It is what it is. Then maybe you have your license suspended and you start to think, I'm just a bad person. You might feel guilty from having been pulled over in the first place because it's like, yeah, I did this. I'm guilty. I have had a few drinks. But you feel shame if you wind up in the clink and you have to call someone to bail your sorry ass out. That's when shame sets in. That's when we humans start to identify as not good enough. That is when we start to compare and despair. Well, my friend down the street has never been in trouble, so maybe I should be more like her. And then we start to model ourselves, to mimic those around us that we perceive as being successful. It's wild, right? Like, oh, what do I do? Who can I be? Can I be like her? Can I be like him? Can I be like this other person that seems to have all of it together? Because me, I'm sitting here feeling shame. I'm feeling shame. Right? Again, the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is you've done something wrong, and shame is you are wrong in your very core. And then the third way that I think we tend to feel shame is you can think even bigger. You can think of like big events, right? Like, let's say someone you love is getting ready to lose their home and they are defaulting on the mortgage, just waiting it out. And they feel ashamed because they didn't know better. And they don't want anyone else to know how much they are struggling because pride, right? Pride. There's nothing wrong with pride, by the way. Nothing wrong with pride. There's nothing wrong with pride. However, I want to express to anyone listening in this moment that if you are in deep shit, get out of your pride, get away from your shame, and ask for help. Okay? I just want to put that out there. Anyway, if someone you love feels ashamed because they didn't know better and they don't want anyone else to know how much they are struggling because they think, how can I save myself right now? And I honestly feel that at any given moment, there will be scenarios that someone you adore can relay to you. Maybe you are like me and you want to heal those ancestral wounds that told you, for example, only babies born in hospitals are legitimate babies. Maybe you want to heal those wounds. I'm laughing because I listen, you all have no idea what I've been through to legitimize myself over being a home birth. In my adulthood, it's crazy. It's crazy. And we could dig in and explore those statements with my coaching practice. Those are the best moments of all. So if you are feeling shame, yes, it matters to identify where the source of that shame comes from, but you may not know it right away. And that's where a coach can help you find it. It just is. And please don't think that you are alone in feeling shame. I promise that you are not. As Rumi says, whenever we manage to love without expectations, calculations, negotiations, we are indeed in heaven. Heaven on earth. Imagine that. Why do I quote Rumi as he says when he crafted these quotes in the 16th century? Well, I think that his words still speak to all of us. And after all of this time, a poet and a prophet, I will always speak of Rumi in the present tense. He walks beside me. His spirit walks beside me. So if you are thinking about ways to manage love, without expectation, calculation, or negotiation, I think it's time we have a chat. I will add my scheduler link to show notes. Please use it. I really, really want you to use it. Oh, and there's one other thing I want to share with you all. And that is that I started a new part-time gig at a local florist. And there are a lot of layers to that. So I will save that for another day when I have more time because it is flat out amazing. That is why we are just going to lay low this week. And if you are looking for me on YouTube, I likely will not appear again this week because there is a lot going on in my world. I know my capacity. I do. I can help you find yours. We can talk about any one of the 3 ways that shame may appear in your life that I've shared with you today, or we can talk about your unique experience, which is my jam. Just know that you are safe with me and that I am here to help you reconnect with your family. I am here to help you light up and shine on.